Welcome back, everybody. Like the title of the video says, we're going to be talking about meat rationing of the future. I know a lot of people are talking about animal products. They're talking about animal-based products. I know that we have a lot of people that are concerned about this. I know a lot of people have been putting out a lot of information about, government-sanctioned, meat rationing, that kind of thing. I don't buy into it just because it's emotional based, it's fear based, and there's no actual facts or sources to back up any of those claims. So I have listed my sources here. I have a list of 10 things that are currently being implemented right now to curb meat and animal product consumption. Okay, these are not my ideas. These are ideas that are compiled by people that do this for a living. So think tanks, nonprofit campaigns, people that are wanting to see the governments, people that are wanting to see meat consumption go down. These are the implementations that they are putting into effect currently in modern day 2021. And so nothing I'm saying here is going to be controversial, I don't think, but this is the truth of the matter. This is how they plan to curb meat consumption. I do not see it being based upon government fiat, hey, we are going to limit your ability to consume meat. I think that a culmination of these 10 things will do it better than, meat sanctioned, limitations like we saw during World War I, World War II. And the reason why those were so effective is because there was this nationalistic approach to the war effort. That's not applicable now. I mean, you can't get people to come together to do anything. So this idea that they're going to somehow use World War I, World War II methods to curb meat consumption, I think it's obsolete to the point of it really makes no sense, and I don't see how one can factually articulate that position. But without jumping too down into the rabbit trail of other people's opinions of the matter, let's talk about meat rationing in the future, and we're going to talk about point number 1. So naturally, one of the most important things you can do is popularizing plant-based meat alternatives. We see this with Impossible Burger. I mean, they have literally plant-based alternatives for just about everything. I mean, everything from burgers, patties, steaks, bacon, fish, all sorts of animal products. Whatever you think of an animal product, they have a plant-based alternative for, even milk, whether that's the soy milk, almond milk, rice milk, what have you. So we're going to see the popularization of plant-based meat alternatives, animal product alternatives, and you're going to see it all over the place like you're seeing now, right? Everything from billboards, advertisement, social media influencers, I mean, you name it. And for those of you that are not familiar with, plant-based media organizations, the vegan movement, this is something they've been doing extensively, especially for the last 10 years. So we see this, and like I said, all my sources will be in the description box below. You'll be able to see this, but these are actual government campaigns, nonprofit campaigns, and one of the most important things that they're trying to do is to popularize plant-based animal product alternatives. And if we're being honest, they're doing a great job, and that is curbing a lot of animal product consumption. I mean, take milk for example. Even people that liked animal products, especially with almond milk, it tastes really good. A vanilla extract almond milk, in my opinion, actually tastes better than most milk that you're going to buy at the store. I mean, personally, the only milk that I find better to be almond milk is actually raw milk, right? So it's one of those things where, yes, they have been able to successfully, in regards to milk, right, get people that are consuming animals regularly to make the switch just based upon texture and flavor. So that's just one example, but we will continue to see the popularization of plant-based meat alternatives. Now let's go to number 2. Number 2, right? This is the bureaucratic red tape and resource scarcity will lead to unattainable prices, right? Bureaucratic red tape. What do I mean by that? Well, for those of you that are not familiar with agriculture, there's continuous, every year, more and more red tape, more and more laws that make it difficult for animal producers to make high quality, readily available animal products for the masses, okay? So when you have this bureaucratic red tape that's being created by fiat, you're going to increase prices. And it also creates resource scarcity because, for example, if you are going to put a slaughter age on a animal to the third of its life, which is actually currently in legislation, well, a cow can live, 20 years, no problem, if treated well, right? So a cow's lifespan can be 20 years. So if you're saying that I have to wait a third of its life, if I have to wait till it's at least, let's just say 5 years, to before I can slaughter it, well, then that means for 5 years you're raising cattle before you're even able to send them, process them and send them into grocery stores nationwide, which means that the scarcity of that product will go up, meaning prices will go up. Prices will go up to the point of it being unattainable for the average person to consume meat regularly, right? It'll become a, luxury item, so to speak. So by increasing bureaucratic red tape, which is what they're doing currently, it will lead to resource scarcity, which leads to higher prices to where average people like you and me can't afford it. Because I can tell you right now, I can't afford the quality of animal products that I currently eat. I would not be able to afford unless the only way I can afford them is I grow it myself. I do not make enough money, to eat the way I eat without my permaculture lifestyle. There's just no way. So I can already see those parallels now. But as we continue and as we push forward, we're going to see the red tape increase, and we're going to see resource scarcity increase, and we're going to see unattainable prices increase. The price of food will continuously go up. Make no doubt about that. Let's talk about number 3. Number 3, partisan subsidies that make plant-based alternatives cheaper. We're already seeing this, right? We're already seeing that the government is subsidizing everything from corn, wheat, soy. We see that they're subsidizing palm oil overseas. We see that subsidies are happening. And these subsidies are not for animal-based agriculture, they are for plant-based agriculture. So what happens is, as I said with bullet point number 2 and bullet point number 1, you popularize plant-based meat alternatives. With the red tape, bureaucratic red tape, and resource scarcity, you create animal products to be, number 1, of lesser quality, and number 2, unattainable price-wise. Resource scarcity, you're going to make them more scarce, which means the prices are going to go up. So then by the government coming under and undercutting those animal-based products by subsidizing the competition, so to speak, you're able to bring the prices down. So essentially, you go into your local grocery store and you see that there are patties for sale, right? You can either buy, beef-based patties for, let's just say $6-7 a pound, or you can get the meat-based alternative patties that they claim to be just as good for $5 a pound, right? So now you have the competition $1 or $2 cheaper. With the popularization of it, and we'll talk about a little more some of the other campaigns that are going to be going on that are ongoing, basically going to lead the consumer to probably, most likely, buy the plant-based alternative based upon a bunch of factors that, like I said, we're still going to talk about. But as you can see, price does matter, right? So your ability to afford a product is important. That's why subsidies are so important. That's why governments have historically, paid dairy farmers to dump milk, stuff like that, to plow under their fields, to cull herds, because resource scarcity leads to increased pricing. This is nothing new. This is something that's been going on for generations upon generations. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next. So let's talk about, culture influences. Meatless Mondays, for example. We're seeing a lot of school districts that are going to, Meatless Monday, alternatives, right? School districts are saying, hey, we're going to do Meatless Mondays, and it's under the guise of health, it's under the guise of, animal rights, etc. So we're seeing a lot of cultural shifts. Meatless Mondays being another one. People like to do Taco Tuesdays. Well, cool. Do your Taco Tuesdays. Just, use meat-based alternatives, use dairy-based alternatives, and have your Taco Tuesdays, right? So all these things that people are familiar with culturally, they're being shifted to a more plant-based foundation, which is important to the ideology of reducing meat consumption, especially if you are thinking that meat consumption is bad or should be curbed for whatever your political or partisan gain is. So we can see definitely a cultural influence, like I've already said with number one, the popularization of plant-based alternatives. You're seeing a lot of social media. You're seeing a lot of different other acolytes that are coming out that are full swing in favor of plant-based alternatives. You're seeing athletes do it, social media influencers do it, celebrities do it, politicians do it. So you're seeing a lot of these influences coming out, and that is going to cause a really big cultural shift for decreasing the consumption of animal-based products. All right, let's go on to the next one. Number 5, making all animal agriculture an existential crisis in regards to the climate, right? Climate change, even with COVID-19, we are seeing that there is foundational opinion out there that's based upon this foundation that animal products are hurting, the process of animal agriculture that's hurting the climate. So this is an existential threat. Being that is an existential threat means that we need to put in to affect all the aforementioned things I mentioned. I mean, it's really easy to pass government legislation that is going to be harsh on animal agriculture if you believe animal agriculture is an existential threat. I mean, I can't make that any more simple. If you really think that animal agriculture is an existential threat, then isn't it your duty to ensure that you curb animal agriculture in all facets, right? And we know that's very easy to do because animal agriculture, I'll be honest with you, is a shit show, right? The numerous steps it takes to get, for example, to get an animal from birth to table is, I mean, there's more than 20 steps involved in that process. So disrupting any of those steps in between can cause heartaches, right? It can cause pain. It can cause increased prices. It can cause a lot of problems. So being that that is the reality, it's very easy to, like I said, say, hey, animal agriculture as an existential threat because of CO2 emissions, and thus, therefore, we need to put legislation that is going to curb this existential threat. And since animal agriculture bad, don't do it. Put something to disrupt that 20-step chain, and you're all set, right? So, like I said, it's not my opinion. This is just what is actually ongoing. There is many people that are in very influential think tanks that really believe that climate change is the climate change problem is really stemming from animal agriculture. So we can continuously see more of these partisan type ideology and implementations put in place as far as bureaucratic red tape and all the other aforementioned items we've been talking about so far. Let's talk about the next one. Number 6, we definitely saw, and for many of you guys, I'm sure you saw as well, that there were individual company mandates when it came to food rationing, especially when it came to animal products. I know the Costco that I go to last year, we did see that, hey, you can only buy 3 different animal products. So you could buy some steaks, you can buy some ground beef, and you could buy some chicken, and that was it, right? You can only buy 3 different products. So we saw that, but we also saw that with other things like rice, sugar, beans, toilet paper. So we have seen individual companies go ahead and take the mantle and say, hey, we are going to ensure that we don't price gouge, but at the same time, we are going to introduce rationing, food rationing, and animal products are always usually accompanied in those food rationing guidelines. So we are seeing that individual companies are really taking the mantle on when it comes to that. Now, it can be easily overcame, so to speak. If you went into Costco, bought something, left, came back in, I'm sure with every trip you could probably make a purchase that way, or you could go to different stores, things like that. So there are ways to defeat that, those government, but private company mandates, right, guidelines. But at the same time, that more or less doesn't take away the fact that those guidelines were still put in place. So in the future, we can continuously see that those kind of mandates from different companies can happen. All right, let's talk about number 7. Number 7, partisan public health crisis, right? Public health crisis when it comes to animal products. So we can definitely, and we are seeing that this mantra that animal products bad, right? And a lot of this is going to be attributed to the Western diet not being healthy for you, the standard American diet. I agree. The standard American diet is pretty crappy. But to say that the standard American diet is 100% correlated or is all encompassing when it comes to animal products is a misnomer. It's simply not true, right? If we look at, take for example, if we look at, a standard meal that people, let's talk about a McDonald's meal, right? Where you have a Big Mac, large fry, milkshake, or soda. When we're looking at that, we're seeing that, well, fries are animal based, the bun animal based, right? And if you have a Big Mac, you have 3 buns animal based, right? And then you have piece of meat that is low quality, that is cooked in all sorts of plant based oils, right? And you're seeing a slice or two of cheese, lettuce, tomato, whatever else on the end that they add on it. So when you take into combination everything, the majority of that diet is actually plant-based, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think that that is the same as, eating healthy vegetables, but it's not the same as eating high quality animal products as well, right? So it's this idea that we're seeing, this mantra that we're seeing, that animal products are somehow inherently bad. And I think that when we're looking at this into, apples to apples, we need to see that, yes, I think that if you're eating large amounts of, low quality animal products that are cooked in, hydrogenated plant-based oils, and you are drinking sodas and you're eating high processed plant-based foods as well with it, yeah, that's going to be pretty unhealthy. But that's not to say that that is the same as me going out, harvesting a cow, harvesting a pig, harvesting a chicken, and not processing, not going through this artificial process. Like I said, there's a huge difference between, you eating bologna that you buy at the grocery store and eating, a high quality pork chop that I produced here on my homestead. They're just different. There's a huge difference between going to Buffalo Wild Wings and eating hot chicken wings, and the difference between me making some wings for you from animals that are produced here on my homestead, chickens that are produced on my homestead. So there is a difference, right? Just like there's a huge difference between, if you are eating, if you go to Hometown Buffet or whatever, and you're eating fried okra versus if you're eating fresh okra from the vine here. So there is a difference, and to try to correlate the two and make it seem like this existential health crisis is 100% has to do with people eating high quality animal based products is a complete misnomer, and there's no science that backs that up. And we can, in another video, we can definitely talk about the science. I've done many debates with vegans on this in the past, but there's just no science that there's no science that holds water when you're looking at it in full context. There just isn't. But with any kind of other public health crisis, if you really truly believe that animal products are causing a national health crisis, well, then it's very easy to take away the subsidies. It's very easy to implement red tape and bureaucratic red tape, create resource scarcity that increases the price. These are all very easy things to do under the guise of public safety. So there's that. Let's go to the next one. Number 8, we're seeing governments culling entire industries. Culling meaning killing off entire industries. We saw that in China with pigs because of swine flu. We're seeing it currently right now in Europe with chickens. I mean, we just saw that Germany is trying to put some kind of process in place so they can stop culling because they've culled so many of them. But we are seeing that entire industries are being culled due to illness, and rightfully so. If you have lots of diseased or injured, sick animals, you should go through the process of making sure that other animals are okay. But that is not to say that just because, for example, here, if America decided that if swine flu was, if there was big pork manufacturers, a lot of the big pork manufacturers are going to be over on the East Coast and, places like South Carolina, Georgia, even parts of North Carolina, but especially South Carolina, you see large pig operations. Well, just because they're having issues over there in South Carolina and there is a swine flu outbreak does not mean that we need to do this national culling where you're going on people's personal properties and homesteads and saying you need to kill your pigs because there is this problem existentially that is going on in big animal-based agriculture. That makes no sense. My system is closed loop. They're not in contact with other pigs. These pigs are not even of the same breed that these other pigs are being affected by. But currently that's what we're seeing in other places, right? You are seeing that because there is an issue in this part of the nation, now we need to do this huge culling operation where we're going through and we're looking at affecting small farms. And that has been something that's been, in the works for a long time. A lot of these mandates, which we'll talk about in one of the next bullets here coming up, is going to address that issue. But essentially what we are seeing, no doubt, is entire industries being completely crashed because of the perception of, that there's a problem. A great way to explain this is, if for those of you that have seen recalls on spinach, for example, not every piece of spinach that's been recalled has any salmonella on it. In fact, most of them may not. Generally speaking, just because you have a single outbreak, you have a single piece of spinach plant that was affected, the whole batch has to go. When in reality, most of the spinach is okay. That's the same thing we're seeing with these industries. Not every pig is sick, but because if there is an outbreak, there is an issue, the entire industry has to go. And so as we are in this new world of pandemic and new world of increased legislation, we can expect that these industries are going to be much more volatile. And we can see that these issues and concerns are going to become much more real in the future. Let's go on to the next. Number 9, the criminalization of local farming, right? We're seeing this all over the place where you have different city ordinances and county ordinances that are saying, you can only have so many hens. You can have 3 or 4 hens, backyard hens, that's it. You can have 1 or 2 sheep or goats, that's it. You can't harvest these animals on your property. You certainly can't sell the animals that you harvest on your property. You can't sell them. You certainly can't give them away to this or that. Like, there's all these restrictions that can only be for private consumption. And so you're starting to see that a lot of these are real life things, right? Take the state of Oregon. Like in the state of Oregon, if you were to go out and, if I lived in Oregon and I wanted to harvest one of my roosters, and I harvested them, plucked them, the whole 9 yards, wrapped them up, and I were to sell it to a friend of mine, super illegal, right? You're talking jail time. But in Oregon, we see that the decriminalization of methamphetamines is alive and well, right? You can have, they even have had trainings on this where, you have lawyers that are saying, hey, if you see somebody openly, injecting intravenous methamphetamines in a public park, you might want to talk to your district attorneys and see if they would even want you to ID them, because if they refuse to ID, you may not want to get into a use of force incident for something that's a D violation, right? So these are actual conversations that law enforcement in Oregon are having. The fact that you can be in a public park injecting intravenous methamphetamines into your system in a public park where there's children, you can write him a ticket, but only if he wants to give you his ID or identify himself. If he doesn't, I would have you refer to your district attorney, because that is a D violation, and do you really want to get into a use of force incident over a D violation, right? So these are actual conversations they're having. But if you dare to harvest one of your roosters and sell it, watch out, because that's not a D violation, my dude. So I understand that a lot of these ordinances and a lot of these laws are set in place because of public health concern. But it's kind of hard for me to even have. To me, it falls on deaf ears when we're talking about public safety from the standpoint of we need to protect human life and we need to ensure that we have a healthy community, healthy state. When you decriminalize methamphetamines, like, we can't even have the conversation. The conversation can't be had logically, because you can't tell me that it's okay for someone to inject methamphetamines intravenously in a public park, and at worst, it'd be a D violation, but somebody that's a homesteader sells a rooster, and all of a sudden, you're talking about actual criminal imprisonment. We can't even have the conversation. We're not even in the same playing field. And we're seeing this all over the place. And this is going to radically reduce, especially when you're talking about people that want to take sustainability to their own hands. It's going to virtually overnight, you are talking about the entire destruction of an entire sustainability movement if you attack and you criminalize local farming, small farming. So these should be all things that we look at from a place of caution, at minimum. I'm doing my best to not seem overly dramatic when it comes to this. And I understand my own biases, and I obviously believe in preparedness and sustainability. But when you are, no joke, for the example I gave of the state of Oregon, when it is more, when the criminal penalties are higher for selling a rooster than it is for, injecting intravenous methamphetamines in your arm in a public park. I think that there is something there that should bring us caution. We'll leave it at that. Let's go on to the last one. All right, bullet point number 10, animal rights. So to me, this one holds the least amount of water for me, and that's just because, I study this stuff. But when we're talking about animal rights, we see that there is a huge push for limiting animal product consumption because of all the slaughterhouse porn that people watch. It's really gruesome stuff. I am no fan of animal agriculture, big animal agriculture, which is why I do everything and I support local. But with that being said, this is an argument that's being pushed forward, just how inhumane this industry is. And like I said, when you can demonize an industry, when you can say it is very inhumane, when you can say it's a public health crisis, when you can say it's an environmental crisis, when you can say that all these things have existential threats on all these levels, it's really easy to put in place the bureaucratic red tape, etc. But it's hard for me, again, kind of like with the criminalization of local farming, it's hard for me to take these people seriously, right? You can't sit here and tell me that you care about animal rights when it comes to slaughterhouses, right? But you don't care about animal rights when we're talking about actually intentionally poisoning the environment using pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, petrochemicals, and not only advocating for that, but also subsidizing that. Your argument is completely dead in the water. You can't tell me that you care about animal rights activism, but then support the aforementioned industry therein. I mean, you can't say that you support animal activism, animal rights, but support plant agriculture. There's just, like I said, that argument is so silly that to me it just completely falls on deaf ears, and there's no rational articulation for that ideology. But nonetheless, we do see that a lot of people are playing on the heartstrings of this, right? We see that people are saying, hey, look at these poor animals, look at this PETA video, look at how horribly they're being harvested. And while those are things that should be addressed and looked at, you then can't turn a blind eye to the potential poisoning of our environments and the potential poisoning of animals to where they will intake a pesticide, or herbicide in the field that will literally cause their lung cavity to liquefy and then for them to drown on their own blood, right? You can't tell me that it's okay to have those kind of plant-based activities happening and advocate for plant-based agriculture that uses these horrific chemicals, but then say, and subsidize that, but then say, hey, well, I care about animal rights, right? So if these people are not actively walking the walk, for me, the argument is null and void. But I realize that we're not talking about me. We're not even talking about you. We're talking about what it is, right? And so based upon all these factors, I think it's really important that we understand what's going to happen next and what's happening in the future. And when it really comes down to it, the truth of the matter is this. Meat rationing of the future is going to look a lot different than what we've seen in the past. We've seen this historical nationalistic movement where people are given vouchers and we are sacrificing for the wartime effort. We're sacrificing for the betterment of the country, right? That is the narrative that has been spun. That narrative is no longer applicable to modern day 2021. People don't care. That is not something that is ever going to be, at least not in my generation. It's not going to happen. I don't see the government being able to enforce these nationalistic type sacrificing, people please sacrifice, right? These sacrificing measures. But what they can do is something even far more effective, right? We can see the popularization of plant-based meat alternatives. We can see the continuous use of bureaucratic red tape that causes resource scarcity, which will increase prices. We can see a partisan, subsidies of, plant-based agriculture. We can see the cultural impacts of all those therein, right? Hey, Meatless Mondays. Hey, have Taco Tuesdays, but use a plant-based alternative, use a dairy alternative. We can see that attack on animal agriculture being existential when it comes to climate, when it comes to public health, when it comes to illness, when it comes to activism and ethics, right? So we are going to see all this happen. And then what we're going to see, which is most scary, is for people like me, producers like me who produce on the small scale, local farming, us become vilified and criminalized, right? The criminalization of local farming, the criminalization of small town farming, the criminalization of localization in general. And so these are all things that, we need to, if we're serious about, look at, because I feel like some people are too busy looking at this from the aspect of, oh, the government will put in a voucher, and that voucher means we can only buy 2 3/4 pounds of meat per person per week, right? And some people have this mentality that that's what it's going to be. No, you guys are way behind. This is the future. This is the template, and this is not, like I said, this is not my template. This is the template that has been put out directly by campaigns that are campaigning for reduced animal consumption. These are what we're seeing governments doing. This is what we're seeing China start to get on board with. This is just what is happening. The people in think tanks that think this stuff up is what they're doing. The Green New Deal, this is what it is, right? So this is what we see happening, and this is what's going to continuously happen. So this idea that, the government's going to start rationing meat, I don't see the articulation for. I don't see the direct science for that. What I do see is the changing of culture. And it's really easy to do it when you can scapegoat big animal agriculture as the existential threat. It's really easy to put in partisan deals for subsidies. It's really easy to, vilify and create bureaucratic red tape that would stifle that industry. And it's really easy to get celebrities, social media influencers, politicians, people of influence on board to push the narrative. And that's really what I see happening. And in fact, that actually is what is currently happening and will continue to go into the future. And unfortunately, just based upon resource scarcity and just the bureaucratic red tape, we will see consumption of animal products plummet. We're already starting to see it decrease, and we will continue to see it decrease. So that's what I have for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Tell me what I got wrong. If you think I got something wrong, let's have a discussion. I'm looking forward to having a discussion with you guys in the comment section below. Remember, all my resources and sources are in the description box below for you guys to take a look at. Hope you guys have a good one. As always, guys, long live the Republic.